Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today I have the opportunity to work on a Shakespeare reel. This is a Shakespeare Sigma SS440. It's a low-profile baitcaster circa the 1990s. This is about the time when they were moving over from metal-framed low-profile baitcasters to the graphite or plastic cases, and it's a nice timepiece here. This one works fine. I actually purchased it at an estate sale. And, well, we're going to just see if we can't clean this up. There's a lot of dirt and debris and the like in here. We'll try to clean it up. We'll give you an inside look at it. If you happen to have one of these, we'll show you how to service it. And, well, we'll all learn something from this one. The Shakespeare line is a nice line. It's, well, now it's part of Pure Fishing, and it's more of an introductory level line. But you can still find these reels relatively inexpensively. And, well, they can keep on fishing as long as you're willing to give them a second chance. All right, well, we're going to start by removing the exterior pieces. And, well, the exterior pieces are the handles and the adjusters and the like and the cases so that we can get down underneath. And when we do that, we want to make sure we know how it's going. And taking pictures is a good way to do that. One of the things you'll notice, this cap nut has a ridge on it. So the ridge was pointing outward when we did that. While I'm removing these pieces and parts, I want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel if you like the art of reel repair. If you like to understand how fishing reels are made and a little bit of the history behind them, then go ahead and subscribe. And if you do, please use that notification button. That'll let you know when I'm posting the videos, and, well, you can see if that's one that you would enjoy watching. One of the things that we're noticing here is we're missing a little tag end of the star adjuster. That's okay. You can still fish the reel without it, and, well, you're not going to find a replacement part. Well, most of the time you're not going to find a replacement part, period, for a Shakespeare reel. A lot of those are, other than maybe drag washers, most of those are usually made in lots. They have a warranty period on them, and when the warranty period expires, so does the support. The support is usually repair or replace at their decision, and quite honestly, most of the time they're replacements. Okay, in order to get the side off, there's a long bar that comes through. You can see how it's threaded on this side here. And once that releases, you should be able to remove the other side plate. Unless there's probably another bar here. I think all of these are probably going through. Yep. One more. So all three of these screws are holding the side plate on. Sometimes you'll find with these bait casters where one will do it and then it will pivot. In this case, it's basically screwed directly in. This has a magnetic system on it, so that's pretty advanced for the reel. It has a single ball bearing back here. This reel has 4 ball bearings in total, and that kind of makes it a nice reel, especially for the time. All right. I'm going to remove the spool from this side. I do want to cut this little piece of line off here. I'm just going to use a little utility knife to put some pressure on it to pull that off. Check and inspect. You always want to do that as part of your servicing. And this is nice and clean. No issues there. When I remove the pieces and parts, I do like to take the opportunity to clean the reel. And we're going to do that in just a moment. We're going to open up this side. To do that, we were going to take the 2 screws that are holding the side plate on. You can see the second bearing right here. There's a little bearing shim washer on there too. You want to account for all the pieces and parts that you take off. So these reels kind of looked, well, Quantum had a reel like this back then. Most of the manufacturers were making reels that had a similar profile and a similar construction to them. I'm not quite sure where this reel was made. It's possible that this one was made in Japan. This one was made in Korea. That was before these reels started moving largely to China for production. Okay, should be able to remove the side plate now. This is a good place, again, to take pictures. We have that small shim washer that goes on top of the bearing. We already removed 2 tension washers that sat behind the star adjuster. We have a bearing in the side case there, and then we have the inner workings of this reel. I'm going to take the fishing reel oil We'll put that into the case here, the oilette bearing. I'm going to leave those cases to the side. Most of the time when I take the pieces and parts off, they will go into a parts tray. That's where you see my hand traveling. And that's to keep track of the pieces and parts so that I don't lose them. We're going to remove the main gear next. Simply pull up. Always say it simply and then you get stuck. So what I want to do is I want to take these two springs off before I lose those. Those are yoke springs. I can probably remove the yoke too at this point. That's the yoke and pinion gear. Put that over here for a moment. And now I can turn the reel to the side and see if I can't pull it up that way a little bit easier. This is the layout for the drag washers and caps. We'll get to that in a moment. And I'm thinking that there's probably a ball bearing under here. So I want to remove these two pieces. Take a picture of this because the clamp that goes underneath that is not symmetrical. There's a little tag sides laying down here and a rounded side on the other edge. So you want to make sure that as you do this, when you go to reinstall, you reinstall it that way. And I'll just lay that here. We'll walk that up. There is a little bit of dirt underneath. We'll take a paper towel to clean that. And there's also a ball bearing back there. So it was good that we did that to clean this up. There's a lot of old grease hanging in there, so make sure that you do a good job. I use paper towels, and most of the time I'll use something like this, a cotton swab to clean that up. A little bit of grease onto the back end. Drop of oil into that case. And before I put that back on, I just want to take a moment. I'm going to take a light spray of penetrating oil. Just as a general cleanup. This is a good place to take pictures. There's a lot of springs and things in here. And if you inadvertently pop one out as you're servicing the reel, for example, this one, which is the spring that's going to control the trip lever, or this spring over here, it's a good way to kind of have a memory where they go if they inadvertently fly off. All right, well, that's nice and clean now. Got one more bearing sitting in the case here. We'll take the time to oil that as well. I oil bearings. I don't use grease on them. Okay, we've got the want to center that for the two screws that need to go back in, and we'll put them back in right now. Well, if you have any questions on this reel or any reel in particular, maybe you want to know more about Shakespeare as a company, maybe you want to know more about low profile bait casting reels, whatever it is, leave that in the comment section. I will try to answer those for you. Generally, I try to answer these questions in the morning, so if you're leaving one in the evening, if you look back around noontime the next day, I should have an answer in there for you. I do appreciate everybody who takes the time to use this in the comment section as a forum and share their knowledge of the reels and fishing life in general, and helping others out when they have a question or a problem. And those of you that watch the channel know me and those little screws. Well, from time to time we have some fun. It's all good now. When you go to put the trip lever click back on, it is a rectangle and it needs to sit on the stem properly. Next up then you have a little back end of the washer. We have a yoke and we have a pinion gear. If you search the yoke, you're going to find that there's a side that has these ramps on it that faces inwards towards the spool. It's going to take a moment to clean the old greases off of this. Again, I'll just use the paper towel and the cotton swab to get the old greases out. And we'll put a grease on this part. I'll take time to clean up the back end of the pinion gear, which had some old grease on it. Use fishing reel grease when you're doing this, please. Don't use your general household greases, automotive greases and the like. Fishing reel greases are designed for use in water, and I trust that the engineers have a better appreciation for what the issues are and how to overcome them than us generally just using a basic grease. All right, a little bit of oil onto the moving parts here. You do not need to remove that trip lever unless that trip lever is giving you an issue. The flat side of that pinion gear goes down. That's what's going to be going into to hold the spool on. Now we can get over to that main gear. The main gear behind it has a plastic cog with two studs on it. Those are going to seat into the back of the main gear. I want to wipe off the old greases that are on there. If they're being particularly stubborn, use a solvent like, well, penetrating oil will dissolve a lot of the greases. But make sure that your gear is nice and clean. And as you're going about cleaning your reel, use a brush, hard bristle brush, to pull through the teeth to make sure that they're not clogged with any debris. But the only issue with this reel is that it hasn't been serviced in a while. We can see old greases in there, the lack of oil. And so when it's time to reinstall, we want to make an effort to get a good amount of grease back on there. Don't overload it. It'll only spread around the side of the case where it's useless. But get a good amount of grease on there. And then reset that plastic washer. And then over the top with that, just set that in the reel. That plastic washer is the drive side for the level line. This is a hard washer. It's probably will not absorb oil, so just make sure it's clean. If you had a permeable washer, then what you would want to do is put some grease on there. In this case, that's not going to do anything. All right, next up then, that little cap washer goes on, and we can install the back end of that case. But before we do that, we just want to check inside. All of that is clean. And while we have it off, sometimes it's easier just to clean it from the outside before you put anything back on. I'm going to use a rod and reel cleaner for this. I'm going to use Penn's rod and reel cleaner. And we'll just kind of get the seams where it's hard to reach when the reel is kind of cluttered with the star adjuster and the like. Just wiping it off. We've got one more big washer here, which we will take the time to oil in a moment. I did want to get the cap off. The cap is the shield for the instant anti-reverse. So that probably dates it to the later 1990s because it does have an instant anti-reverse clutch in it. Put that on. And then before I go much further, I don't want to install these springs yet. I want to turn this case around. I'm going to use a little bit of penetrating oil in here as a solvent. I'm just going to mop up the inside while I have the chance to clean out all that old dirt. It's actually dust. I mentioned that I got this at an estate sale, and I think what's happened is these reels were stored for quite some time, and well, you got a lot of dirt and the like here. Still a nice reel. 4-ball bearings, a big clean gear. The technology is still relevant. There's no reason in the world why this reel can't go fishing and have a second chance. Okay, cleaned that up nicely. I want to service the pole before I go and put the rest of this on. To service the pole, you remove the cover cap. Make sure that's clean. And then if you just gently tap down, most of the time that pole will come out. And you can see this one needs to be cleaned. There's an awful lot of dirt and junk there, and while that's just going to prohibit this thing from working properly. Wipe it off. If it's stubborn, go ahead and grab a pick. You want to make sure that you clear it off that shoulder there. And then you can reinstall the pole. Put that back into the channel, and then turn the drive to make sure that the pole seats down and that the line guide is turning before you put the cap back on. Start it by hand so that you know you're not cross-tripping it. And then we can put the cap back on the side plate. There's 3 holes that those screws go through. Find one, you'll find the other 2. And just take your time. They need to be centered. It's a little bit of a balancing act here. You got a couple of things going on. Just walk it over. And now you can take those 2, oops, that was an oops. I got so worried about losing those springs that I forgot to reinstall those springs. That's the value of having a parts tray. When you have that parts tray, you can kind of casually glance in there and you'll see those weren't installed. So let's do this again then. Again, you got about 3 things you're trying to do here. Well, that's one way to do it, isn't it? Okay, got a nice tight case. We've got our 3 screws seated there. I'm going to push the collar for the anti-reverse through. We're going to oil the bearing. Now you can put that bearing back in the case. And we can recall that there was that small bearing shield washer that goes on next. Okay, we have the 2 screws that are going to hold the side case to the gearing. So let's put those in next. Then we'll be able to free our hand up to do some other things. So this was a well-made reel, and 4 ball bearings was certainly beyond what the economy version would be. The economy version might only have 1 ball bearing right on the stem and then rely on bushings to solve the rest of it. In this case, all of those are there. I've used the 4. At the time, those bearings were not inexpensive, so I would say that this reel, from a manufacturing or pricing standpoint, was a little bit more than your average Shakespeare reel was at the time. All right, just cleaning up a little bit of what's left over from that dust. See, just every time I look to see just a little bit more of it. 1 more drop of oil onto the worm gear since we've already put the pawl in. And now we can take the spool, a little bit of grease onto the side shaft of the spool, which is going to go through the pinion gear, a little bit onto the back end, which is going to seat the bearing. Now we can install the spool next. With the spool installed, we've already oiled the back end bearing. Just need to get the orientation correct. And just work it so that you have the side case seated, and then finger tighten the 3 case screws. Okay, case screws are tightened. I guess you could do a 1/4 turn with the little pliers or something if you more confident with your hand strength. You have those two tension washers. They're bowed. Don't try to flatten them out. They're supposed to be. Those tension washers, I tend to put the curve facing up on the first one and down on the second one. They're to manage the sensitivity on the star adjuster. They can be set different ways. There's no wrong way. Next up then is our star adjuster. It's got a little bit of dirt on it too from sitting around, so take the opportunity to polish it. Again, I guess if you had owned the reel and that popped off, you could always try to put a little bit of epoxy or crazy glue or something on there. With it off, it's not going to be material to the performance of the reel. So just go ahead and do your best to keep it clean and work around that. Handle nut goes on next. Remember, there's a little ridge on that nut. You need to make sure that it threads evenly. It's very easy to cross thread these. Take your time. So all I'm doing is cross threading them at the moment. There we go. Remember that ridge faces up. Tighten it to the point where you can see that it's almost perpendicular to the screw hole in there, and then that cap should just fit right in there. The screw should work in tightening it down. With that done, the only thing we want to do now is just put a little drop of oil into each side of the handle knobs. Make sure that they are done nicely. And grab a clean paper towel to get rid of any excess oils that may be laying around there. Tighten down on your star adjuster. And give it a test. Let's see how we did. Well, it runs nice and easily. Let's drop the easy cast, make sure that trips back. Give it a spin on the spool. Now you have two adjusters here. You can tighten the spool performance, or you can loosen it, depending on how you're casting and what the weights are. And we also have this mag drive. Now the mag drive, typically they suggest that you set your mag drive halfway and then see how that performs. If you need more for backlash prevention, move it up high. If you need less, bring it down to a lower setting. Well, there we go. That's it. That's your Shakespeare SS440. It's a Sigma, which is above the basic entry-level reels. Circa the 1990s. Nice reel all around, and one that's got plenty of fishing left in it. Just tightening down the drag now to make sure that that's clamped down. It is. And we're ready to go fishing. I hope you've enjoyed that. To our first responders and essential personnel, thank you for everything it is that you do to keep us safe. To everyone, have a great day on the water. Best wishes fishing. Enjoy the channel. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a nice day.